Are we here? Are we in the house?
Yes, we are here.
You're coming in loud and clear, honey.
Okay, just making sure we're in the house because that's where we want to be
That's
today.
where we want to be. How are you, gorgeous? You look
I'm
amazing.
good. Thank you. Thank you. You know what I mean? It's delighting, girl.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
It's good to see you too. This is Piper.
I've heard so many wonderful, wonderful things about you. We met like a cajillion years ago when you performed in Baltimore with Davo, but very briefly. Yes.
Well, nice to re-meet you, sweetheart. Love the glasses. Yes.
Thank you so much.
I just did a hormone shot, so I might be a little kooky. Just go ahead and put that out there right now.
We love it. Give me all the emotions, honey. All the emotions.
Yeah. Tears and laughter and all the things. Honey.
We're known to bring that out.
Welcome to the story.
Yes.
We
it
love
makes
it.
Great content.
That is the beauty of this podcast.
Awesome.
Okay, are you ready, girl?
Yes, hit it.
Welcome back, everyone, here on this lovely podcast called Absolutely Sure No Idea with Piper and I. I'm very excited today to welcome the multi-talented artist and my bestie, Krylon, better known as Krylon Superstar. She is an actor, a singer, a model, a fashion stylist, and a visionary in her own right. From bold choices and concepts in musical expression and shocking performance art, Krylon brings a boundary-pushing aesthetic and vibrant energy to every medium she touches. Krylon is the other half of the duo Double Duchess that we are both in, obviously, and you're just an amazing human. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I love you guys. I'm super grateful to be here, honestly. It's a joy and a pleasure. And I just love you. So, and I love Piper too. I don't even know you, girl, but I love you. Let's work it out.
Instant friends.
Yeah. I love it. So
you did not mention also Krylon's a witch. Welcome.
There you go. There you go. A witch.
Questions about you're bringing witch vibes. I think it says it on your Instagram, and I was like, oh, I love her already. We have so many things to talk about.
Oh,
you're right. It's just such a piece. It's such a piece of you. I guess I've taken it for granted. You know what I mean? So thank you for bringing it up.
Give me the history, because you guys have a deep, rich history.
So Krylon and I first met. Well, here's the thing. Krylon has quite a deep, rich history way before we even met. And so I feel like setting the stage a teeny bit for that really gives the complexity of how Krylon continues to look 21, and she is not, but not much older. So
don't tell anybody's age.
No, not saying an age. She's just a little bit over 21, and I mean a couple days. When Krylon and I first met, we hung out for like a couple days and literally just like talked, and I was like, these stories are amazing. So the first time Cry ever met a really old friend is when we played a party called Blow Pony in Portland. It was the first time you reconnected with Eric, and you and Eric were club kids from the 90s are from San Diego. Okay, so tell us a little bit about what made you decide to want to leave San Diego and go to New York and begin the transformation of basically like putting Superstar after Krylon Superstar. What was happening during that time for you?
It was the 90s. It was the 1990s. I was already well into my 60s or 70s. We won't get into the age thing. Okay, she's preserved. San Diego, I love San Diego. It's my hometown. Absolutely loved it. It was one of my favorite places in the world to grow up. I'm happy that I grew up there. But the problem was that San Diego was so small. And I just kept seeing bigger picture stuff. I kept seeing fashion. And there was a magazine called My Comrade that I wound up picking up in San Diego. And I just saw all these amazing, performers in these great clothes and stuff like that. Another magazine came out called Project X. And Project X was basically a club kit magazine. And I would read that magazine all the time and dream about being in New York City, dream about being in the Big Apple with the big buildings and the multicultural people and the different languages. It was just fast and fast paced. And San Diego was cute in the tiny little, microscopic scene that I was a part of, but it wasn't that small. I mean, everything was kind of big in the 90s, but at the same time, it wasn't New York big. And I needed New York big. I had a really good friend. Her name's Sean. She's amazing. She's a witch also, and she's a massage therapist. But we met Sean in Palm Springs. Remember that? We performed.
Probably. We've met so many people. I'm like, yeah, probably. There's a good chance.
Yeah, sorry. So me and Sean used to rave together in San Diego. I went to all the raves and I was a club kid. And I was weird. I was a freak. You know what I mean? I was a goth. I was a hesher for a minute. I was just weird. I just loved being eccentric. I could not fit into any of the boxes. I never could, right? My mom really knew that. We were alternative at the time. Indie came out later. We said we were alternative.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I just felt like if I go where the people are, I will somehow learn whatever it is the people know. And I just wanted to go where the people are so I can learn what the people know. And what helped me was The Last Unicorn. I remember watching that movie. It's a beautiful movie that came out in the 1970s. It's about this unicorn's family got pushed into the water by the Red Bull. And then they made the drink after the unicorn. But they
did wait, did they really?
My Netflix queue.
Go look it up.
Girl, the show notes for this pod are going to be insane.
Like, Google it. Like Siri knows, honey. One of the things in that movie was that she was talking to this butterfly. I know it's going to get weird because that's who I am. She was talking to this butterfly and she's like, girl, where are my people? Because there's a hunter that went into the forest that was like, I don't know where all the unicorns are, but I know there's one left in this forest. The forest is really beautiful and lush. And she was like, really? Where are all my people? And so the butterfly finally told her, and she's like, I got to get my people. They were all in this ocean that was being like protected or watched over by the Red Bull, and they're terrified. So basically, she was about to take off to go find her people, and there was all these animals that were like sitting around at the edge of the forest, like, girl, where you going? It's like, how are we going to live without you? You're like our life source. And she's like, I'm going wherever it is they are, and I'm going to learn whatever it is they know. And when I heard that, I was like, I'm out. And for me, that was not just New York, that was Montreal, that was Berlin, that was everywhere. I just wanted to go wherever it is the eccentric, eclectic people are in the world and learn whatever it is they know in different places. And it was so beautiful to be able to do that because then I get to grow, right? I get to grow not only just psychologically and spiritually, but also creatively. And so me and Sean, we got in her Ford Mustang and drove across country to New York City, reading the Celestine prophecies. There's another side note. No, it was really cute book.
Sure.
Reading that book and got to New York City, and I was like, hey, I'm here. You know what I mean? I'm here. And I'm so happy that I did it in the 90s. Because New York City in the 90s was,
fertile ground.
So you were already, for those who don't understand club kid culture, please go Google, but like creating these like ginormous stacked shoes and outfits in San Diego, right?
Already doing it, absolutely.
Okay. And
so I was doing that in San Diego. I was working in nightclubs in San Diego. I was being booked to go to raves in San Diego. I was on flyers and stuff like that. And it was already happening, but I knew that the source of all that was in New York City. Like the heartbeat of the club kit movement was in New York City. Yes, it was happening in London. Yes, it was happening in LA. Yes, it was happening in San Francisco. And it was really cute. And I came up to San Francisco. I'm in San Francisco right now. Came up to San Francisco for like a summer, ran away in the 90s, back when you could run away from home a lot.
Yeah, it was safe. There was no internet.
You know what I mean? No internet, nothing like that. You just had to dodge,
people like really couldn't find you. Yeah, they couldn't track you.
No, totally. I mean, walking outside of your house in the 90s just to get to school was like a scene out of the Hunger Games. You know what I mean? And so New York City was the destination. And then I learned so much more about myself because as a trans woman, I always knew that there was something in me. I always knew that inside of me, there was a she. And I didn't know how to express that. I tried to express it when I was little and got shot down by my mom's ex-boyfriend. who threatened physical violence on me. So it automatically made me see that to want what I want is to invite this kind of repercussions. And so I kind of stuffed that down for a long time. And I got to New York City and I met all these beautiful people. I met Willie Ninja, who actually wanted me to be in a house of Ninja. I told you about that a long time ago, right, Deva?
It was literally on my list. I was like, if she doesn't bring it up, we're going to talk about how you got invited to be as a part of the House of Ninja. Please Google. It's the most legendary Vogue house that you could be in. Willie Ninja was the star of the Vogue video for Madonna. So just for a frame of reference.
Absolutely.
That story reminded me when you told me, when you were, first of all, I've never heard you tell that movie explanation ever. And I've known you for so long. So like, thank God for keep giving me gifts. But that unicorn, it reminded me of how you described yourself feeling that the House of Ninjas sought you out for your unique presence. Like they were like, you are so naturally beautiful, essentially, like, and feminine qualities, right? As a kind of implied, but it shouldn't be, but that you are so, and then there's hesitance for you to join at that time. And you had alluded to the uncomfortability of being an out trans person in the 90s.
Right.
And especially sort of in that scene at that time.
Yes, specifically because at that time, when I got there, I was still doing club kid stuff. So it was more like non-binary is the terminology we'd use today. But back then we were like gender renegades. It was about gender smashing, or androgynous was a word being thrown around a lot. And I embraced it, and that was on the runway. That was all over the place. Like androgyny was like the way to go. It's so funny because people act like that kind of stuff is new, girl. It is not new. You know what I mean?
I think our generation invented it in the 90s. Like, I mean, it's like we could go back to like Greta Garbo and
and then also David Bowie and Prince and like, Mark Bolan and all that other kind of stuff. But I feel like the way it was presented in the late 80s, early 90s, and how it was kind of immersed onto more of a mainstream rather than just a unique, like everybody was trying to be androgynous. You know what I mean? Kurt Cobain was running around in a dress with like, But anyway, I was terrified about the response of my being, no matter where I was, no matter where I was. And so when I got to New York City, I met up with my friend Mylar, and Mylar and I sort of formed this kind of like club kid rap duo, which is so funny. Mylar was already working at the Limelight with Michael Alec. Limelight was where the club kids was with Alec, and that's again. Look it up.
Party monster, guys. Look it up. Sure. We don't have time to get into all of it, but I need you to do your research. Okay, thank you so much.
Research. Theory, girl. Theory.
This episode requires homework. We'll drop those assignments in the show notes. Don't worry, folks.
Yeah. Do you know what I feel like we should drop in is so Krylon was on, was it Geraldo? Jerry Springer. I went down the rabbit hole. I was like, was it Jenny Jones?
Jenny Jones.
I know. As like sort of, so they presented as like the club kids and like save your kids from the club kids or whatever. And like there's an appearance of Krylon being on that show in a very interesting presentation that I tried to find, but if we find it, we'll put it in the notes.
I do have a snippet of it on my Facebook page right now. That's the first part of it, not the second part where I actually speak, which I don't know how to find that. Somebody posted the first part of it, and you could see me clearly on the panel right next to Mylar. And I'm just sitting there. It was a lot. We lied. We always would lie. It was club kids would lie. We didn't tell the truth. You know what I mean? We were liars. And the thing was that we were telling people that me and Mylar moved to New York City so we can like become these serious professionals and models and like which true, we wanted to be models, but we weren't trying to be professional. We were like, oh yeah, we don't want to do drugs or anything like that. And it was a lie. It was an absolute lie. You know what I mean? And we did it so that we could get on the show.
Of course,
right. Blew us out. Two of the people that were sitting next to Cody Cody and, I think her name was Bree. They were both trans women and they both passed since they were so fabulous. I love them so much. They both worked at Lucky Chains and with Laverne Cox. I knew Laverne back in the day too. I knew me and Laverne used to hang, me, Laverne, and Laverne's brother used to all hang out actually in my apartment several times and listening to opera music because we were obsessed with opera music. Look at me, I'm training off, girl. You gotta keep me on track.
We love it. I'm gonna let Piper jump in because I know we have some questions burning. I can see it in your eyes.
Well, I just think it's like for people who are listening that have not done the homework yet and Googled 90s club culture, I think it's important to recognize that it was a time where there was this sort of intersection of performance art, music going and listening, and like this thriving subculture, how people would think of, punk or grunge happening in people's garages. But this was happening on a massive global scale as a subculture that, you could go to a party in Chicago and then fly to Berlin or New York or San Francisco. How was this even happening? And this was kind of like just pre-internet into like early internet days. Like there was, Raven Club chat rooms on like AOL and shit like that where you could find where parties were going to be. But you could either just go and attend, or it was this place where you could like use it to create like a character of yourself. You could create an identity, versions of yourselves, or creative exploration in how you dress and how you're seen. Like you could create a persona and become known as that persona. I think that's what was so fascinating about that time and the club culture. And what I'm hearing you say, Krylon, is that you were already doing that in San Diego. You were kind of experimenting like with persona, like with performance, and wanting to take it to the next level in New York. And you just kind of got dropped in, like right place, right time, right people, right things happening. How did that experience, like being in New York, being in that vibe and scene, how do you feel like that shaped your creative trajectory for the next 10 years after that?
Well, so this is the thing. There was a lot, like you said, I dropped in at the right time with the right space and right people and stuff like that. So a lot of those artists were doing high quality, very in-depth performance art pieces. It was that kind of performance art that was like, I'm going to die on stage for my art. I don't know anybody that did that, but if somebody had did that back then, I wouldn't have been surprised. Because that's just
Right.
that's the level of devotion people had to their craft. It's not just this is something that I do and then I go home. Like, no, these was 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, immersed into this persona and identified as it, and so when I dropped in, there was already these amazing performance artists that I had heard of, like Lady Hennessy Brown, and then my ex, his name is Floyd, and then all these other like, amazing artists that was, Ron Afey and stuff like that, who had been doing some great stuff for a really long time. When I came into the scene, I didn't know that I was actually going to do performance art. I just dropped in. I was doing the club kid thing because I was connected with Mylar, and I started meeting all these amazing club kids, genitalia, wallpaper, Esther, all these amazing club kids, and I became pretty close to them. I remember one of these, I have to tell this one little story. When I went to my first club, I had made a patchwork outfit out of Krylon patches, like the spray paint, and I just safety pinned them all together to make a dress. And I had like shaved my eyebrows out and had safety pins as eyebrows. I had this huge hair and these 5 foot tall platform shoes that I had custom made because we used to custom make our shoes back then. And me and Mylar fell out of the cab because that's what we did back then. It was part of being dramatic. I fell out of the cab and rolled over and stood up. Kenny, who was the door person for every single club, Kenny looked over at us and we walked up and Kenny's like, you two. There was a line wrapped around the corner and he pointed, you two, into the club. and we went straight to the club. I've never stood in line. I never stood in line for anything to the point where I'd go to the grocery store and I'm like, excuse me, where's the VIP section? Because like, why am I
Right.
standing in line? You know what I mean? But yeah, and then going in and meeting these people and meeting Michael Alec and all that other stuff. And then of course all the things happened. And if you guys don't know it, you know, Michael killed somebody and blah blah. I knew the guy that they both killed, Michael and it's Freeze. I knew Angel. He was an amazing person, right? And so I kind of slowly faded out of the club kid thing and I started moving more into the rock and roll thing. And that's when I met Tina. Tina is like my trans mother. And when I met Tina, that's when I started to become a lot more myself as a trans woman. And Tina was like your androgynous that like people don't know. Girl, take off that makeup and put on a nice little wig, throw on some cute, you know, throw on some daytime realness makeup instead of clown drag. You know what I mean? Do all of that stuff. And because your lady looked the part, she was super, super, super like, she was like a kind of a strict trans mother. You know,
Mm.
she's like, I want you to look how beautiful as you present. And so she taught me because she knew that there was that woman in me and she helped me to bring her out. And I'm so grateful for her.
Mm.
And so I learned all these different things, but then I started to go into the rock and roll scene. I was living with this guy named Mario Diaz, who's like one of my closest friends. And he was working at Stingy Lulu's at this restaurant that I was working at the time where I met Tina. And when we got kind of close and then he needed a place to stay. So me and Tina let him stay with us for a little bit. And then he decided he wanted to start a party. So he started this party and it was really cute. And then he wanted to start another party. It's like, Krylon, I'm starting this party and I'm calling it Foxy. And it's going to be this whole thing of like, what will you do for Foxy dollars? These Foxy dollars is what the crowd they get when they walk into the door, and then they give them to the performer, and that with the performer with the most Foxy dollars win actual dollars at the end, right? And so I'm like, well, I'll do it. I didn't think it was going to be anything, whatever. But I already had that performance in me, and because I was performing at Stingy Lulu's, but like drag performances and kind of monster drag performances. You know, I do like really crazy stuff already. And so Mario asked me to perform and I said, okay. And I did. And I think I like stripped naked and shoved the broom up my butt and started sweeping the floor with the broom up my butt. And then I put shaving cream all over my body. And I was like, I'm going to get arrested. And I had everybody follow me out the club and I jumped on a cop car trying to get arrested. And the cop was eating pizza and didn't even blink because it's New York City. So, and you know, it's Alphabet City and
Oh,
there's like
New
this
York.
naked trans girl. You know what I mean? But it was a legendary performance. And from that moment, for the next 3 or 4 years, I was the reigning champion of Foxy to the point where sometimes Mario was like, girl, you gotta let somebody else win. I just kept coming up with really creative things because of the creative world that was around me. It was, you know, at that time, there was all this stuff happening at the Pyramid Club. There was Otter doing some stuff at the Pyramid Club. There was Anthony from Anthony and the Johnsons, Anthony, who I love. She was doing really amazing parties at the Pyramid Club, and she asked me to perform there too. And it just kind of snowballed into me performing and doing all these wild performances all over New York City. And I was watching amazing performances. And when I look back at it, I see like just this slew of things that was happening. But then there was also like moments of mellow, peaceful shows where it was just me singing with a band that I formed at the time. And we do simple performances. And I was obsessed with the Cocktail Twins and obsessed with all these different types of ethereal, ragey type bands. That influenced a lot of what later became my more mellow, more put together performance art, where it was like
Mhm.
actually, it wasn't so wild and punk. It was a lot more put together and presentable to like, you know, something like the Guggenheim or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you for sharing all that. So Cry lived in Berlin for 8 years?
8 years.
Did Berlin have a different effect on you creatively? Like, how do you feel like it expanded or changed what you were doing in New York? And with the context of saying that, like, and I don't know how much you want to talk about this, but Krylon was married, can speak very fluent German, and the person she married was quite wealthy. So I always envisioned this like one side of you being super rich and posh, and I love that about you. And then the other side, I also hear these stories of you doing these like even more crazy performances that you were doing in New York. So I'm curious because I've witnessed you like kind of embody both those energies all the time. I'm very much in our own Double Duchess experiences, but I almost imagine those days in Berlin as a bigger sort of like range of extremity. But how do you think it was different for like, in general? Like, how do you think your creative experiences were different in Berlin than say New York at that time?
When I moved to Berlin, they'd already heard about me from New York, and they already knew that I was doing some stuff. And when I met Hendrik, I met him actually in San Diego on the beach. And then he is the person who kind of blew me out because he fell in love with me and I fell in love with him. And there's a lot to unpack there, so we're going to keep it in a general way.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
In a general way. It's all going to be in the book, honey. Look at
There
us.
you go.
Exactly.
But yeah, I met Hendrik and I didn't know his family had money. I thought he was just a cute German boy. And then, of course, we fell in love. I broke up with the sugar daddy that I was, throwing around. One of the many at the time, girl, because, beads and bangles cost money that I didn't have. You know what I mean? And club kids we couldn't work normal jobs. And trans girls we couldn't, I wasn't even like physically transitioning at that time. I mean, I've always been psychologically, spiritually, and energetically trans. That's like, it's the physical transition that people see. The mental stuff and the spiritual stuff we already knew about long before the physical stuff came, right? I was pretending to be a boy. I was pretending to be a gay boy, because I thought that would make it easier because, I stopped transitioning in New York City, I guess, to kind of de-transitioned because a lot of my friends were getting killed. A lot of the girls that I loved were, showing up in the East River. Nobody was doing any kind of investigations around it. These are beautiful girls. We were all kind of doing what we needed to do in order to make a little coin on the side. You know what I mean? And I was just terrified because I was one of the pretty ones, and the pretty ones were the ones that was really getting targeted and really getting killed. You know what I mean? So I was like, let me not put myself in danger. And then I didn't want to get boobs. And I didn't want to take hormones and all this other stuff. So I was terrified. I was terrified of all of that, And so I detransitioned and I was role playing like a gay boy, And I met Hendrik and moved to Berlin. By the time I got to Berlin, a lot of those people already heard about Krylon from the shows I did in New York. I just loved Berlin and I kind of jumped in, and there was a guy named Gabriel, and Gabriel I met in New York City, and Gabriel moved to Berlin before I moved to Berlin. And so when I got there, he was already there. I saw him out one day and I'm like, Gabriel, and he was doing art stuff because he was a performer too. Somehow we just started doing stuff together. We started a party called Fuck Barbie. Oh, excuse my language.
Please cuss.
Please cuss, especially if it's in the title, girl.
We started a party called Fuck Barbie, and midnight, midnight, every single party we'd burn a Barbie. And we had a huge culture as part of it. And I did a lot of performance art there. So I only brought my performance to Fuck Barbie. And then doing that slowly got me more and more and more until I was approached by a director, Yvonne, who was doing some theater pieces and plays at this theater called Sophienseele. And he asked me to come to perform. And I showed up and he loved it. And so I was in the next 3 or 4 plays of his, and we traveled all over Europe doing these plays. He basically would have performers present whatever kind of performance they wanted to present to a big crowd. So it was a group of performance artists who put it together in a cohesive language so the whole crowd could follow along. We traveled all over and did performance art. And I believe it grew because it became a lot more theatrical rather than in clubs and bars. I had to do the exact same performances over and over again for each show. And that was never really the case before. So the difference is, to your question, Davo, the difference is that it became a lot more organized.
Okay.
And
It sounds like
in
a
that,
real refinement of your craft as a performer.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like put
Mhm.
a little bit of structure around some of it.
Structure for sure. And in doing that, that offered me a lot more opportunities on a grander scale because
Mhm.
people can go to clubs and they can see it and it's great. But for some strange reason, when it's in that kind of sort of structured, a theatrical staged environment, it seems a little bit more professional,
Yeah,
right?
they're like, "Oh, that's what you're capable of. Got it."
And then eventually that brought me to meeting the directors for this play called, what is it? Salome's Last Dance, or Salome. It was based on Salome's Last Dance, and he asked me if I would be in the theater into the play. And it's at Deutsches Theater, and Deutsches Theater is literally the German theater. So it was this huge, huge theater. And I was the person who cut the head off John the Baptist. You
Someone
know
had
what
to
I
do it.
mean?
Somebody
Somebody
had to
had to
do
do
it.
it, girl. Somebody had to do it. And what better to do it than a witch, right? Of course.
But it's so
I think every single aspect of my life, if I get a little deep on y'all, I ask this real quick, but every single aspect of my life from childhood and, living in sort of like a fantasy place because that was the safest place to be in the environment I grew up in. I spent a lot of time alone, even though I had siblings. And I spent a lot of time alone, mostly in my mind, right? And then I escaped into books and poetry in the library because I like the rhythm of poetry. And that brought me to music. And I've always loved music and I've always wanted to do music. And that spiraled into me finding out more about myself on a spiritual level. And when I was introduced to a band called Throbbing Gristle that led into psychic TV, that's when I learned a lot more about the craft, about magic, and what that actually means, not what the Hollywood portrays that to be. And I sort of fell into that and became a part of the Topi movement, which is the Temple of Psychic Youth. And and I was doing performances with this band called Crash Worship, which is a big witchy band in the 90s and stuff. So yeah, and then that kind of led into me finding my own spiritual language within the magical community, taking from ancestral magic, blending it into my own sort of ideology of spirituality, which I've later learned as a result of, you know, not drinking or drugging anymore.
it's how you really hear yourself.
That to me leads us to where I have a lot of insight of you bringing all of that deep sort of spiritual witchy knowledge and a long history of performance art and like cut to Krylon and I seeing each other in a meeting and being like, hey girl, and then we casually were like, oh yeah, I make beats, and you're like, yeah, I've been in bands and I'm a vocalist, and I was like, cool, and we made a song, and I went down to San Diego to meet some of Cry's friends. We were just like hanging out. I tell the story all the time because it's my favorite way I feel like any creative project should really begin is we were just doing because it was fun. We played it for some of your friends in San
Funny.
Diego, if some of your friends in San Diego, and they were like, are you guys gonna make more songs and like, be a band? And we are like, sure. Like we didn't even think about it. Like it wasn't even, you know what I mean? It was so organic. The song is called What's That All That? And it's about as silly and simple and funny as it could possibly be as a song. And it is also the energy that Krylon and I had. Like there was this there's you hold so well this deep, deep knowing and then deep, deep playful and silliness. And what I love about that and the project and how we met is that you hold both those spaces very dear, especially the silliness. Like it's such a dear, important part of you and our practice together. And what I really love is during our creative process, you are such a visual thinker. And I think it's so fun. Basically, I would just make some random beat and Krylon would tell me everything that she saw. She'd be like, oh yeah, we're like in this place. I'm on a runway. It's shiny. I'm wearing this and it's so gorgeous. And there's like some attitude. It's like warehousey or high end. Like you described so vividly what you were seeing. And I would translate into that what I thought that was like sound wise. It was and obviously from that song led into, Krylon already had the idea of what it would look like visually in a video, what we would be wearing. It's so vivid and so intuitive.
When we started, what's that, how that sound is? I think the laughter, because we connect so well. It's almost as from the jump. I would look at you at meetings, you would look at me at meetings, and it's almost if we could like communicate without communicating. And it's always been that way. Even when we're making the music, at the moment we knew something was going to pop, we both knew it was going to pop because it's like, that's hilarious. That works, and it made sense. It made so much sense to have that similar creative language with another person, but also in a general friendship way, like being able to have that, like that laughter on tour. We were constantly laughing, constantly. Like the whole tour was just hilarious, it was hilarious. And
so
it was
true.
like at being able to, and then because that sort of happiness and light and fun, that's attractive to people, right?
Yeah,
And so people want to jump on board with that. And when we got on stage, it was absolutely fucking electric. People were like, whoa, where did all this energy come from? And we like gave everything. And it's so funny, the amount of stuff I had you in. Davo, like, poor Davo, he was like, girl, you got me in hot pants.
He's like, I just want to wear my jeans and my t-shirt. And
Right.
you're like,
You know what I mean?
absolutely not.
I'm like, absolutely not. And Davo was such a good sport. You're like, okay, girl, let's do it. You were
all right.
All right, we're going to do it for the fans.
I won't eat this whole day to fit into these pants. Fine. That's what it takes.
My favorite thing about prepping for this interview with you, Krylon, was Google image searching Double Duchess.
Wow.
Like the sheer array of costumes and like aesthetics. I mean, it's a perfect blend of music making, of performance art, of a symbiotic creative relationship. You have no idea what the shape of it is going to be or what the journey is going to take you on. But you just know, like, this is the direction that we're going until this ride is over, and we're just going to have a shit ton of fun. And you can see that fun and creativity and joy in the videos that you can find online of you, the costumes, the visuals. You were having a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. And even when we were up against new challenges, I love that we were both in a spiritual place to talk about them, right? We're in a spiritual place to address any sort of discomfort. Or there'd be moments where Jay was like, girl, what's going on? Let's talk. And you just noticed that there was something going on. Maybe it's because outwardly I just can't hold it in. But like also being able to have that conversation, I think is super important to grow creatively with another person, And we would do that. It was so meat and potatoes in the beginning. It was like so DIY in the beginning, It wasn't until, right? We were like, girl, we had people had friends holding cameras in the back of Davo's, at Sextera. You know what I mean? While we're doing like videos.
Robbie almost literally falling out of the back, who had like never driven a car before because he's from Ireland, the United States. And we were just like, somehow it was a good idea to let Robbie drive for like a block and like almost died. Yeah, I mean, so many, like, I mean, we made our own bike spoke cards because like kids were like bike in the city and we were just broke. So we like made these like bike spoke cards, like spoke cards you can put in your bike, because all the biking crews and like, I mean, Antone was there for so much of that early part of just like helping us design and like just photographing us. Like, it was just like such a family sort of experience.
It seemed like it was something for me, like a lot of what we did we were part of the beginning of some sort of queer revolutionary vibe in that particular genre, right? It was
For
like,
sure.
yes, a lot of that stuff had happened, but not in this particular genre, not the way it's presented. Then we got to meet a lot of the other like people that were doing that. And what was really beautiful is that a lot of people that were doing that at that time were people of color, right? Then there was Double Duchess, and it was me and Davo. And, you know, it wasn't for a long time that I did not even know that Davo was like fully white. I just, you know, I was just like, "Oh, you're white? See?"
You sure?
Thank you.
You know what I mean?
Such a compliment. I appreciate it.
And it was so amazing to not only experience Double Duchess and experience the creativity, but experience how you handle being a white male in an environment like that. It
Yeah.
was brilliant to watch you do that and still give space to the people of color that were in that environment. Like you recognizing who you are and what your privilege are as white male, but then also being able to create an environment so a lot of more people can express. That's a beautiful fucking thing. And I mean, what you did was just above and beyond. And I
Yeah.
love being a part of the band and watching your journey creatively.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
No, absolutely.
How do you
And
feel like that chapter, that experience, because you and Davo did Double Duchess for quite a number of years,
Like
right?
6 or 7, I'd
6 or
say.
7 years.
7 years.
How did that inform what you did afterwards?
you know, after Double Duchess, I felt like when we did our last video and when we got to that final scene where me and you were holding hands and JD said cut, and I started crying. So I was like, girl, the promises. And for me, it was like, we did this. You know what I mean? We did that. Kelly Osbourne is in our video. We're not in hers. And the realization that if this happened, anything can, you know?
Sure.
And and I loved that there was all this other opportunity that came up. Davo, we started doing Swagger and we got really deep into that. And it was awesome that that happened. And then I started doing other like cute little side projects and, you know, those kind of things. I also know that I'm an older person and it's not high kicking and dipping. It just don't happen like it used to back in the day, you
The
know?
recovery is so much longer.
It's a lot longer.
So much
I mean, I
longer.
could still turn and twirl and all that stuff, but now it's like her back a little bit. So I had to start thinking about other types of work as well. And that's when I moved more
Sure.
into being a hairstylist. Now I do that and I get a chance to be on set for films and TV shows and fashion shows and all this other kind of stuff. And what a beautiful thing. And I'm working at a salon now in San Francisco, and it's a really amazing salon. I'm also back doing music again, you know, and still open to doing stuff with Double Duchess whenever we get anything, because the last time we did a show, it's almost as if nothing changed. We got on stage, that energy was there, that fire was there. You know what I mean? I was in my actual physical truth, you know, as opposed to Double Duchess when we started it. There's a part of me that thinks, God, I should have started to take hormones then and get my top surgery then and all this other kind of stuff to be a lot more of what I am today. But it happened exactly the way it was supposed to happen. And I'm so grateful that it did happen. And now that I'm living in this physical truth to match my spiritual reality, I get to still revisit that. And when last time we were on stage, I remember Eric came up to me and said, what you did on stage was so important, because I'd like took my top off or what, I can't remember what I did, but, and I had like my boobs out and stuff like that. But the whole performance, it was Double Duchess again. But it was Double Duchess with Krylon as she is. And that to me was powerful, you know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'd done some rock and roll stuff with Honey Mahogany, and it was an awesome band. But Double Duchess was it was like my soul.
Something I wanted to touch on, Krylon, because this whole conversation has really been about your identity journey and the ways in which your creativity has danced with that, Would you say that's true?
1000%.
How beautiful. Because this show that you're talking about, this last performance with Davo, it was recently, right?
It must have been because I had
Maybe
my chop
less.
surgery
Yeah,
last year.
recently-ish in the grand scheme of Double Duchess. Yes, recently.
So it's really like this, not chapter closing, but almost like a heroine's journey, right? Like the point where all of the pieces have sort of come together in this beautiful way. And then it's almost a release. Like you can now go forth as you, as a fully connected, embodied you, both spiritually and the outward manifestation of that. What has that given you permission for, if anything?
Well, it's given me permission to reinvent myself
Mm.
and to continue to reinvent myself. I love how David Bowie spoke about how it's important to reinvent the wheel in order to continue to grow creatively and spiritually. And for me, that's what it's about. It's about the reinvention of who I am. I mean, Donna's reinvented herself like a gazillion times. And as that happens, it's just being able to consistently find more creative, like expressions. I am an artist. That's what I am. That's what I've always been. I don't think it's something that is necessarily taught. I mean, you could teach certain technical aspects of it, but it's a spiritual expression, right? It's a physical expression of a spiritual truth. And if you're spiritually creative and a spiritual artist, there's nothing that can ever replace that you will feel fully satisfied with, right? And so I believe since I'm here doing this, I have to continue to focus on growing with this, right? Because I'm not done. And learning how to fall in love with it again, learning how to continue to fall in love with it,
Mhm.
because I think it's just that thing where it's like, if you don't use the gift, I'll put it this way. There's this hippie boy that I was having sex with. I won't get into it. His name is Combo.
His name is?
Compost?
Yes, he is, honey. Trust me. These stories about compost,
Dying.
Meaning of life is to find your gift, and the purpose of living is to give it away. And
Oh,
I think that's the most powerful thing I'd ever heard in my entire life. And so, what is that gift? That creative gift, right? And in order to really feel fulfilled, I need to be living in and giving away that gift that was given to me by the universe. And that's magic, right?
absolutely. That gave me chills so much because you're right. It's like, what are we even doing here if we're not looking for why we're here and then actively seeking ways to do that, to express that, to be that, to live that in full authenticity with ourselves? We're not here to follow somebody else's blueprint. We each have our own individual blueprint. And I think that's been like the beautiful journey. I mean, in my life for sure as a creative person, but even in this podcast experience, like the people that we're interviewing, really understanding what is their blueprint. What have you been wired to do with this one precious life? How are you doing that? Just to give permission for other people to seek, like, what is your blueprint?
Mm,
Like, I think dissatisfaction, frustration, misery, it comes when we're trying to fit ourselves into somebody else's game plan. Like, that's not meant for you. What is meant for you? Like, you have to take time to find it. It's never going to just drop in your lap. It's the thing that you have to find through quiet, through discovery, through learning about yourself. And you got to go do that thing or you're always going to be unhappy.
right. Go do that thing, not think that thing or feel that thing, but do that thing. I love the action part of this change that happens in the mind. It's like I could never fully have a tomorrow experience in a today reality. I can only sit back and hypothesize and theorize, but that's not what's actually happening. So it's like, what can I do today? What actions? Actions, not feelings or thinking. So what actions can I do today that changes all of that? When I look back at the past and see all of the stuff worthwhile that I had in my life was because of the actions that I took. leaving San Diego to go to New York. It was just like, I'm gone. I don't know what's going to be there. I don't know how I'm going to live there, but I am gone. It's like
Mhm.
God, right? In God, God can't catch you if you don't jump. That's why it's called a leap of faith, right? It's time to jump. I just got to jump and trust that there's going to be a net there because it has been. So I wound up just going to New York City and then off to Montreal, doing some dancing and stuff like that, not knowing what's. And so it's always been that way. I have to take that leap of faith in order to be in a place of peace and presence is always got to be about taking the action to get there. I hate that the Wizard of Oz is called the Wizard of Oz. I wish it was called Dorothy and the Yellow Brick Road. Because, honey, the honest truth is that all that stuff happened on the Yellow Brick Road.
Right.
Gavin,
Nothing to
right?
do with the wizard.
You're
She
right.
was a witch. She got a pair. So she met some friends, had some fierce shoes. All that happened on the Yellow Brick Road. She get to Oz, and it's some random white old man with no real magic.
No.
We knew he was white. I mean, he was metal, but still. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? We
you
knew
knew he was white, even when you didn't see behind the curtain yet. Yes.
He was rusty ass. But like, you, you're so right. I think you're speaking to the action part of it. I think is so important because if we want to live creatively, if we want to be artists, we have to put ourselves in this space to create something that's never been there before. That
Right.
requires action. And
Absolutely.
in order to do that, we need to be in a space where we have the room. And I think like part of making space allows us for that opportunity to come. I think we both were really in a space that we had moved to a new place, had no idea of what we were really going to do there. We just
Yeah.
knew that we were just living our full existence. And then voila, like there's lots of room for us to create something that had
Right.
never been there before, you know?
Right.
And I think
Absolutely.
continuously doing that as you get older can be difficult, but there are lots of ways to spiritually be fully aware of when we're backed up, so to speak, or, when we don't have the room, when we need to shed a lot of things that don't allow us the room for that.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Action does not have to be perfect. It's so the idea of perfection, right? I love that, in the rooms we talk about progress, not perfection. That means I have to stop thinking in perfect terminology and just take action. It's going to be what it is because I'm taking action to what that looked like for me today. And if I start to try to perfect it, that's me trying to control.
Yeah.
Yeah. The stagnation that causes is the frustration that we're talking about.
And I think so many people, when they get stuck or they're feeling trapped or that sort of meh, like what's next? And I don't know. And I'm not really inspired by something. There's something in your identity that is begging to be shifted, to evolve, and to hear what that is, and to maybe give yourself a little permission to get closer and closer to who you actually are, to
Yeah.
make your insides match your outsides and vice versa.
Yeah, and like be the partner that you want to be in a partnership with, like for yourself. I mean, sometimes Cry would just be so spontaneous with this idea, and I'd be like, like initial would be like, oof, I need to think about, you know what I mean? Like I'd be like, but it always would be yes, because I was like, well, I don't want to be the person that like, the other side of that is like, I have this great idea. And the other person's like, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, nobody wants to be the one that's always like, I don't know. You know what I mean? Just don't be the, I don't know person for yourself.
Person.
Like just say yes. And like, it'll be, if it's a failure, great. It's kind of like, letting kids play in the dirt when they're young. They build stronger antibodies and shit. Right.
They get germs.
They get
Good.
sick less. It's like the same thing. I just feel like it's like, don't be that, I don't know, person, like to your own progress, like,
Well said.
can I ask you one question before we wrap?
Yes.
This is a trick of an old book that we used earlier, but I just want to know what's a question that an interviewer has never asked you that you would like them to ask you?
That's a really good question. Interest. Woo, girl, you took me by surprise. You done did that thing. I guess, I don't know. Honestly, the things going on in my head right now, it's like, well, nobody's ever asked about my poetry or my writings. I've kept journal ever since I was young. I still have hundreds of journals and hundreds of writing. And I don't know, like, what am I passionate about, like, outside of music and art?
I'm kind of hearing writing, journaling, poetry. Tell us why it's important that people should know that about you.
Because it's the documentation of emotional surges in my life, right?
Hmm.
And it's almost as if it's like an addiction. If I don't write, I don't feel well. I don't feel like I've connected to something, right?
Hmm.
My sponsor always says, Krylon, why don't you go into one of your journals? Just pick whichever one, you have hundreds of them. Open up to a random page and start reading. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you'll ever read is something you actually wrote.
Shout out
And
to Steven.
Steven, everyone needs a Steven.
Shout out to girl, Steven. You want to talk about a different life planet?
yes.
Steven is amazing. Steven will recite the problem you have in literally one sentence. And you're like, God
Yes.
damn, he just has like a book.
Read in the most
A
beautiful
book
way.
of wisdom. I'm just like, and
You
Krylon over
should
here
get
just
Steven on this podcast.
Krylon just been, creating your own version of that, and it's beautiful.
Well,
To me,
that's
it's
the
like
thing.
it's your wisdom in your writing, probably, right? Those
Right.
emotional. What did you say?
Surges.
Thank you. Yeah, I was like, that sounds amazing, but emotional surges documented. That's beautiful.
For me, it's true. It shows me where I went, how I was responding, and how I got to where I'm at now, because it's like my brain will make everything so real that I forget the details, around it. And then when I look back, I'm like, oh, that was the details. That's what actually happened. And I get a better outline of how to deal with things today. So I believe that somehow has kept me so much more grounded and emotionally stable. One of the things that I learned, when the pandemic happened was, you remember, Dave, I was having all those panic attacks, and that was right before I started to physically start to transition again.
Yeah.
All that was because of me suppressing who I was and being forced, locked down technically, to be with me, to look at me, to experience me,
Sure.
When I was in that lockdown, I was faced with me, and I'm so grateful that I had the tool of writing, right? And now when I look back at all of the writing that I did during COVID, during lockdown, I'm like, whoa, this speaks so much to the hopelessness I thought I was experiencing, but seeing it in a different light, like, oh, actually, that was fear creating a story, right? It's the thought that creates the story, and the story becomes like a feeling, and the feeling becomes a belief, right? I don't believe it until I feel it, right? And the belief becomes an obsession. Now I'm obsessed with feeling it. And when I'm obsessed, that's when I'm uncomfortable. And when I'm uncomfortable, I want something to fix me. It's either fight or flight. It's either picking up a cigarette or shopping online or doing some sexy time stuff or whatever. It's something that I just can't sit with it,
Yeah.
Gratefully, writing helps me to get through that. And it has always helped me somehow to get through that.
Bring the emotional awareness to the runway, okay?
On that note.
Babe, I wish we had so much more time to unpack all your nuggets of wisdom. Of course, you'll be coming back at some point. Let's be honest.
Definitely. We're going to talk about so many things. So we'll for sure have to have you back on, Krylon. I'm so glad I got to meet you and have this wonderful conversation with you.
Oh, and I love the name Piper. When I was young, there was a girl named Piper that I knew, and she was a punk girl, and we were punk rock kids together. Piper would come into the pit with me, and she'd beat the living shit out of everybody who tried. Piper was this big old girl. She was like, do not fuck with Piper. So every time I see that name, I immediately think of Piper, and I have like such fond memories and sentiment of her.
I love that. I love that.
Amazing. Amazing. Is there anything you want to tell the people that they should know about, that you're working on, that you're excited about? How they can learn more about what you're working on that you're excited about? Now's the time to make
Right.
that
Where they
plug.
can get a haircut, maybe anything.
Yep,
Let-
anything.
So I work at Madhu Salon SF. It's in the Marina District of San Francisco. It's a curly hair salon. So we focus on curly hair. I mean, all textures of curls. It's not just Black people or people of color. It doesn't matter. We teach you what sort of products that, that are best for hydration for your curls. So we do that. And that's in the Marina District in San Francisco. And unlike on a creative level, that's like a big part of my creative expression today is, working with hair. And that's something that I've always done all my life. I've always been into hair all my life. My mom was a hairstylist. She went to hair school when she was pregnant with me. So I was at hair school in utero, girl.
In the
You know
womb.
what I mean?
In
And so
utero.
Born
all
to
of
it.
that stuff. So I know hair, and I've known hair all my life. The owner of the salon, she's a Haitian lady named Marie, and she's also a witch. And so it's good because when I met her, she was like, honey, you're going to come and work for me. And I'm like, that's damn right. I'm coming to work for you. And it's just like being the house, a voodoo doll belongs in the house of voodoo, darling.
Honey.
But
I know.
there's that. And then I'm also working on music. Very Grace Jones meets Radiohead meets 90s
cool.
style house. So it's really,
Amazing.
really cool.
I love
And I've
that.
been writing the lyrics for that and doing vocals for that. And outside of that, stay tuned for more Krylon. I'm just doing what I do and doing more stuff with Double Duchess.
Yeah. So
That's right.
Lems and I are getting in the studio together in DC soon. We're starting to have some studio dates. So we're gonna need some vocalists. We're gonna figure
I'm
out how to get
down.
Cry to Maryland real quick. Yep.
Oh, I love that.
Thank you so much. I loved meeting you.
Thank
Loved
you
having
guys.
you on.
Thanks,
I love you
Cry.
both. And I
We'll
hope you
talk
guys
to you
have a
soon.
wonderful rest of your spiritual day. And I'll see you soon.
You too.
Bye.
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 Hey there. Thanks for listening, and we hope you're feeling more curious and inspired to make a step towards your passion. To keep you connected, take a second to follow us on Instagram at Absolutely Sure No Idea, and follow us on Apple Music, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts for upcoming episodes. Lastly, help us grow this baby by sharing an episode with a friend who needs to hear it. All right, until next time.